If you've been to my channel before, then you probably know that I've studied a little bit about Hans Holbein the Younger. And if you haven't been to my channel before, hello, my name is Lynn, and welcome to my channel. So, what does Hans Holbein the Younger have anything to do with Lucas Horenbout? Well, Hans Holbein the Younger, he was a Swiss-German painter. He learned how to paint from his father, Hans Holbein the Elder, and then he went to England. Actually, he went to England twice. First from 1526 to 1528, and then again in the 1530s, and he was there until his death in 1543. Well, where Hans Holbein the Younger, he learned how to paint portraits from his father. Wall murals, think large-scale portraits. At some point, he learned how to paint miniature portraits. So think of something that was maybe 4 centimeters in diameter. I'm talking small. And that is where Lucas Horenbout comes into play. Lucas also learned how to paint from his father, and then he went over to England and started painting for the Tudor court roughly about 1525, and then by the early 1530s he became an official court painter for King Henry VIII, and Lucas specifically focused on miniatures. And it was with Holbein working with Horenbout that he became a pupil of Lucas, and then that's where he learned how to paint miniatures. And then at some point it looks like the student surpassed the master. Let me show you what I'm talking about. But first, a little more information about Lucas Horenbout. Lucas Horenbout, or Hornebolte, was born between 1490 and 1495. He had been trained in Ghent with his father, Gerard, who was a court artist to Margaret of Austria, who was regent of the Netherlands in the final phase of Netherlandish illuminated manuscript painting. He was a Flemish artist who was already renowned as an illuminator by the time he arrived in England around 1525. He was employed by Henry VIII in 1525 as a court miniaturist. He was appointed to the office of King's Painter in 1534, and on that same day he became a denizen, which was a special form of citizenship granted to foreigners. This position was renewed in 1544. Unfortunately, that's the same year he died. He was the founding painter of the English tradition of portrait miniature painting. In 1535, Henry VIII remarked, "For a long time I have been acquainted not only by reports from others, but also from personal knowledge with the science and experience in the pictorial art of Lucas Horenbolt." He was paid an annual salary of £33, 6 shillings, in comparison to the £30 paid to Holbein. 22 miniatures have been attributed to Horenbout, dating from about 1525 to his death in 1544. His later work was overshadowed by the output of his brilliant pupil in the art of miniature painting, Hans Holbein the Younger. His artistic style is detectable in the modeling of the features, the prominent shadows under the eyes and mouth, and the form of the inscription seen against the blue background. Not all of his pictures have the inscription in the background, but many do. He had a wife, Margaret, and a daughter. He wrote his will on December 8, 1543. He also had a sister, Susanna, who was a member of Catherine Parr's chamber. Catherine Parr was the 6th wife of Henry VIII, and his wife painted the queen in miniature in 1544 and went on to provide further miniatures for her over the next 3 years after Lucas's death. He died in May 1544 and was buried in St. Martin in the Fields on May 10th at a substantial cost of 13 shillings, which underscores his income and social status. This is a miniature portrait of Queen Mary. At the time, she was Princess Mary, and the inscription at the bottom of the portrait says the Emperor, Princess Mary, and the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V were betrothed in 1522. In 1525, the engagement was broken off. That same year, she was declared the Princess of Wales. This is a miniature portrait of Catherine of Aragon. She was the first wife of Henry VIII, and the inscription on the portrait says Regina, which means Queen, Caterina, Catherine, Ives Vixor, his wife. So she was the first wife, and this portrait was painted roughly about 1525. And although Blackwork embroidery is known as Holbein stitch, it's a double running stitch. If you zoom in closely, you can see that there is blackwork detail or black detail work right on the edge of her shirt, and this is my interpretation of that pattern. This is a miniature portrait of Henry VIII. HR is Henry Rex, so King Henry. And then on the right hand side you will see the Roman numerals of XXXV, that means 35. So this was painted right around 1525, probably when he was 35 years old. He also has, it looks like blackwork embroidery detail right along the edge of his shirt, and when you zoom in, it looks just like the embroidery that was found on Catherine of Aragon's shirt. Here's another miniature portrait of King Henry VIII. It is similar but different. It was probably painted right around the same time as the previous portrait, and we know it's King Henry VIII because the inscription literally says in Latin, King Henry VIII. And when you zoom in on the portrait, you can see what looks to be like blackwork embroidery on the edge of his shirt. Here is a third portrait of Henry VIII, and again, HR, Henry Rex, Roman numerals V111, so Henry VIII. And then on the right-hand side in the inscription, it also has the Roman numerals of the number 35. So this was probably painted around the same time as the other miniature portraits. And when you zoom in, you can see there is some black detail work there. So it looks like there probably was black embroidery. However, Horenbout does not seem to put in as much effort on the intricate detail work what Holbein did, because it is very difficult to try to figure out what the blackwork embroidery pattern was on this shirt. And this miniature was watercolor on vellum laid on the back of a playing card, and that playing card was the Ace of Diamonds. Artists at this time would a lot of times pick playing cards that represented the person who was sitting there. So diamonds, think the wealthy, and the ace, that is the one who has the most wealth. And here is a fourth miniature of Henry VIII. If you notice, the first two miniatures, Henry VIII was clean shaven. The next two miniatures, he has a beard. He was known to wear a beard, shave the beard off, wear a beard again. But these were probably all painted right around the same time. And this portrait, unfortunately, there isn't a high resolution of this portrait. So when you try to zoom in, because you can tell that there is blackwork embroidery on the edge of the shirt, but when you zoom in, it's just a garbled mess. This is another miniature portrait painted by Lucas Horenbout. And on the right-hand side, you will see the inscription has the Roman numerals for 25, indicating that the person sitting for the portrait was 25 years old. The miniature might possibly be of Anne Boleyn, and when you zoom in on the portrait, you can see there was blackwork embroidery on the edge of the shirt, and this is my interpretation of what that pattern looked like. Horenbout is also credited with painting this miniature portrait of the Emperor Charles V. And when you zoom in, you can see that there is a black detail work right on the edge of the shirt, to me indicating that there may have been blackwork embroidery there. But once again, unlike Holbein, you can see that there is something black there, but Horenbout just does not have the intricate detail work that Holbein did to see exactly what that pattern was for that embroidery. Next is a portrait miniature of a gentleman, and when you look at the inscription, you can see the Roman numerals there to see what age he was, and when you zoom in, you can see along the collar that there is detail work. Based on the coloring, it looks like it may have been black work, but also with the gold dots there, to me that says that there may have been gold work embellishment on the collar as well. And this portrait may possibly be of Charles Brandon, who was the first Duke of Suffolk. This next miniature portrait is of Catherine, the Duchess of Suffolk, who was the fourth wife of Charles Brandon. And no year is provided for this miniature. However, it was most likely painted between 1533, when she married the Duke, and 1544, when Horenbout died. And when you look at her collar, you can tell that there is blackwork embroidery on the collar, but when you try to zoom in, once again, you can't really tell exactly what the pattern is, and part of that is just simply Horenbout was not as intricate in his detail work as Holbein was, but also you have to remember all of these miniatures are roughly 4 centimeters in diameter. This next miniature is of Henry Fitzroy. He was the illegitimate son of Henry VIII and Bessie Blount. He became the Duke of Richmond and Somerset. This miniature was watercolor on vellum laid on card, but the playing card was the Ace of Hearts, which I find to be a little odd because at the time Henry Fitzroy was born, or even when this was painted, Catherine of Aragon, the first wife of Henry VIII, was usually painted on the back of the Queen of Hearts. And so for the illegitimate son of Henry VIII to be painted on the Ace of Hearts when he had no biological relation to Catherine of Aragon, Henry VIII's first wife, that does seem a bit odd that it was painted on the Ace of Hearts. It was 4.4 centimeters in diameter, and it's possible that this miniature was painted at the time of Fitzroy's marriage in 1534 to Mary Howard, who was the daughter of the 3rd Duke of Norfolk. And he, the Duke of Norfolk, was the treasurer of the household and the Earl Marshal. The thing is, with this portrait, you can definitely see that maybe Holbein was helping influence Horenbout, because the detail work on the headwear there, it looks like this was probably a nightcap, but you can see there is blackwork embroidery there, and you can actually tell by the detail work what the pattern probably looked like, and this is my interpretation of that. This is a miniature portrait of an unknown lady. We can tell by the Roman numerals on the right-hand side and the inscription that she was 27 at the time. At the very edge of her shirt, you can see little black dots, indicating that there was some embellishment with black on it. Whether that is black embroidery or just the edging of the shirt, to me, I think it's just the edging of the shirt using probably black silk thread to help with the embellishments on the edge of her shirt. The thing with this portrait is it is not 100% known, so that's why it just is labeled as Portrait of an Unknown Lady. However, it is believed that this might have been the Princess Mary, and that is based specifically on her nose and the shape of her nose. And this is a miniature portrait of Jane Seymour, and it is also credited to be painted, or to have been painted, by Lucas Horenbout, and this miniature is at Sudeley Castle. And even though this isn't a miniature painted by Lucas, I wanted to include this just because around this time you don't hear much about female painters, and Lucas had a sister, Susanna. He also had a wife, Margaret. They both painted, and this miniature portrait was painted by Lucas's sister, Susanna, and it's believed to have been of Mary Tudor, who was the Princess Mary, who later became Queen Mary I, otherwise known as Bloody Mary. And searching Mary's royal expense records found that on July 20th, 1546, she was gifted from her father, Henry VIII, a black cross with 5 diamonds and 3 pearl pendants. This jeweled cross with the pearls matches the one that Mary is wearing in the miniature. Records also show that Mary had gifted some black silk to the artist Susanna Horenbout, who was part of her circle. If you would like to check out any of these portraits, this is my Works Cited page, and my Works Cited page continued. Thank you for checking out my YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this video and would like to watch more of my videos, please follow the links on the side of the page. Please select thumbs up that you like the video. It helps with the algorithm. If you have any questions or comments, please post them below, and please click subscribe and ring the bell to be updated when new videos come out.